Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Aagahi with Warisa Zainab. In this episode of Aagahi, we're going to discuss a very serious topic that has impacted the lives of thousands and thousands of women around the world. Women working in professional fields, as working women, women in personal life, as well as women in social and public spaces. Harassment is a serious matter, an issue that affects the lives of thousands of women, and the consequences are faced physically, psychologically, and emotionally for years to come. In today's episode, we have invited two special guests who are the co founders of an organization called Seeking Sakoon. This organization provides mental health support service to the local Muslim community. The people who founded this organization will tell us why they came up with this idea and what the need was. Let me introduce the guests today. We have with us today Sister Yasmin Heenaye and Sister Farah Ahmed. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam.
How are you today?
Mashallah, I'm very well. And yourself?
I'm not sure if I can hear Farah.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now, yes.
Alhamdulillah, I'm doing
thank
well,
you.
Warisa. How are you doing?
Not too bad myself. Jazakumullah khairan for taking the time out from your busy schedule, because I know, Farah, you are pursuing your education in cardiovascular sciences, and Sister Yasmin is also a geriatrics doctor. So let's begin the show, inshallah. First of all, introduce yourselves, your organizations, most importantly. What came up with the idea of establishing Seeking Sukoon?
So, as with most of these organizations in the field of mental health or well-being, a lot of it is from personal experience. So, myself and Yasmin, we've both had personal experience. I've had personal experience with anxiety during my year of studying for my master's degree. And it was triggered to an extent where it was affecting my daily life, and really affecting the quality of my life. I subsequently sought counselling after about 6 months of not understanding what what my symptoms were. I subsequently sought counselling. It was with the NHS. Alhamdulillah, I recovered, but my spiritual side and cultural needs weren't really addressed. So that's why I felt like, especially living in Luton, where is in such a ethnically diverse community, I feel the needs of our sisters especially are not being met because there is nothing that is focused on faith, that addresses your mental well-being. So no advice for the Muslims in specific, and also Asians and culturally as well. So that's where I came from. Yasmin, I think you've got a slightly different story.
Go on.
So I was having problems in my marriage, and I suggested counselling, and my husband at the time suggested that we go for an Islamic counsellor, just so they can understand our faith needs. So I reached out, managed to find an amazing Islamic counsellor, and eventually got divorced. So she coached me through the divorce process and the difficult time that I struggled with after that.
Yeah.
And then I continued with her through my journey of like self-development and independence, and was able to get over the insecurities that I'd faced in my first marriage, and alhamdulillah, get married again. But the benefit of having a Muslim counsellor was that not only did she address my insecurities and low self-esteem and confidence issues, she also was able to understand the spiritual angle. So I found it really beneficial, alhamdulillah. So when Farah and I met and we discussed trying to sort of support the mental health of the Luton community, we thought it was imperative that we have someone who's understanding of our faith.
Thank you so much for sharing your experiences with us. I'm sure a lot of people who are watching right now can relate to that as well. This is a live call-in show, so if you have any questions to ask Farah or our guest Yasmin, please call in our studio number. You can also leave your comments and feedback on our Facebook and YouTube Diet TV page. So, how long has it been since you established this organization?
So we actually formally set up in January last year, January 2020. Alhamdulillah. We've now got our own team. We've got an entire volunteer based team. And I think things have just gone really picked up the pace since COVID. So we've gone virtual as well. And we had
Mm.
to adapt quickly to meet the needs of the community and make sure we're still serving them in some way. So yes, alhamdulillah, about a year. But prior to that, myself and Yasmin, we've got a couple years of personal research, having our personal counselling session, therapy sessions, and attending conferences in mental health. So yes, and we're always learning. That's the main thing. We're always learning to advance ourselves and our team.
And I think in this era, when most of us are suffering due to daily stresses and the pandemic itself has taken a toll on people's life, I think more than ever before, there is a desperate need to seek professional help. And like your sisters mentioned, that although there are counseling services out there and therapeutic services, but to cater the needs of the Muslim community specifically, to keep in perspective our faith, our culture, that's something we often feel neglected in. So tell me about the support service that you offer. How does it work?
So there's a few things that we do. So the main scope of our work is we have a helpline. And so if you have any problems, if you're suffering with your mental health, if you have questions or queries or just want some support, you can call the helpline sort of any time. You leave a message and then one of the team get back to you. And then what we do is we allocate you a mentor. Now, the role of the mentor is to support you through your journey. So what they do is they take an initial assessment, see what sort of advice, what sort of support you need. And then we can often signpost or refer to professional services if that's required. If you just need a listening ear, that's what we're here for. If you just want some advice, that's what we're here for. So, mashallah, that's running successfully. The other thing that we do is we host monthly coffee mornings. Now, before
Okay.
lockdown, we were hosting this in the mosque. And that's sort of like a platform for women to come, and it's very casual, very comfortable. You come, you have a cup of tea, you have a bit of cake, you have a chat, and any issues or any support you need, that's the platform to reach out. It's a confidential service, it's very open, non-judgmental. At the moment, we're holding them virtually over Zoom,
Yes.
so people can join that way. And again, we often have speakers there, so if you want advice about a certain topic, there'll be someone there who's of that profession. And the last thing we do is we do community workshops and events. So I recently held a traumatic birth event, trying to support women who've suffered from that. And we had a range of, again, professionals showing different techniques such as tapping, EFT. We had a Mizan therapist. We had a doula, an Islamic doula. And so that's just supporting women. So we hope to do more of those sorts of events for the community.
That sounds fantastic. What's the turnout like?
So we generally get between 30 and 40 women. That's online. And that's because obviously it's nationwide because it's online. I think in person we were getting about 20 women at the coffee morning. Is that right, Farah?
Yes, I think that's the main. Our intention isn't to gain a big yield at the coffee mornings. We want an environment where it's comfortable and intimate enough for women to feel comfortable to open up and
Sorry,
speak.
Farah. We will take a short 10-minute break just for Salatul Zuhr, and then we will come back live. Stay tuned. Inshallah, we'll join you soon. Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to Aagahi. Before going on the Salah break, we were discussing um, what Seeking Sakoon as an organization can provide to the local community in terms of mental health support. And in our show today, we have got two fantastic sisters all the way from Luton who are the co-founders of Seeking Sakoon. Welcome back, Farah and Yasmin.
Thank you, Arisa.
So before going on the break, Farha, you were talking about the turnout in the community and how women come for these coffee mornings and then they discuss these issues that affect them on a daily basis.
Yes, so I was just mentioning that our aim is not to get as many people to attend our coffee mornings as possible. It's more to create a comfortable, warm environment where we can all open up and ask questions or learn from each other's experiences. So often large groups can make people a little bit anxious about opening up. And also, what we do is we have our team members also speak in Urdu and other languages common in South Asian ethnicity to allow women to feel more comfortable to open up. When there's someone speaking in their mother tongue,
Yeah,
you feel like you can relate more and open up a little bit more because they're understanding perhaps more of the culture.
definitely, definitely. So I would like to ask you here, because you work with the Muslim community at large, you come across people who mostly come from the Indian, Pakistani subcontinent regions, and they most probably speak Urdu or Punjabi. In our community, there is a big stigma attached to mental health. Yeah. When it comes to physical bodily ailments, we don't feel embarrassed or shy. We'll go to our GP straight away if you're in pain. But if someone in our family or loved one is experiencing psychological pain, going to a counselor or a psychotherapist or any mental health professional is often the last resort. Is that the case?
We so obviously the women who reach out to us have chosen to reach out, but we do find there's a definite stigma, and it's one of the reasons we try to set up the association to try and reduce this stigma and encourage people to reach out for psychological help as they need it. One of the biggest stigmas that we found so far is almost the shame or the embarrassment of having to reach out for
Mm,
help.
yeah,
We find that a lot of families who have a family member suffering tend to sort of ignore the issue or brush it under the carpet or
mm,
maybe even reach out for help but keep it very secretive. They keep it within the family. They don't want anyone else to know because
yeah,
it's almost
yeah.
like it's a shameful thing to need help
Mm,
with your mental well-being. And what we try to do is disparage this and say, just like your physical health needs looking after, your mental health needs looking after too. We all
of
experience
course.
difficulties. We all have ups and downs in life.
Mm,
And there is no harm, no shame in asking for
yeah,
some support.
definitely, definitely.
Especially during COVID, when we're very, very much isolated. We're not in the supportive communities that we were in before. Um, People who were sort of being abused, or be it emotional abuse, domestic violence, that they're stuck in the
Mm,
house with the people that are giving them this grief.
yes.
So they need help more than ever. So there's definitely a shame element surrounding this mental health or psychological need. The other thing is, I think that people also don't realize that they can ask for help. I think mental
Mm,
health is something that we're not very educated in. People don't
yeah,
realize um, what's wrong, that they need help, that there's support out there. We have women contacting us who saying, I was looking for someone who understands my spiritual needs as well as my psychological needs. Is there such a
yeah,
thing? Is there as Muslim counselors? And we're like, yes, of course there is. Let us help you. I don't think people realize the amount of help that is available. And I think Farah maybe can comment a little bit on when she was going through what she went through. She didn't know initially what was happening because
mm,
when you taught these sorts of things, you're not.
Yeah, unfortunately, I mean, when I was at school, I don't remember learning about mental health.
mm,
Even our families or our support group perhaps might not know about it. So even myself, I've studied, alhamdulillah, a degree and masters, I was still confused about what my symptoms were. I did not
Mm.
understand for a long time. I kept it to myself. And I think a lot of it is lack of information and understanding. We don't realize that just like when we have a problem with our heart, for example, we go to the
Mm.
doctor, seek help. If there's that's your body's alarm system to tell you to do something. If you're
Yes.
having a panic attacks or your heart starts racing or you're feeling really low all the time, that's your body's way of telling you that you need help. And I think lack of understanding and also lack of understanding of what our Deen says in mental health is another thing. For some reason, we don't look at even the Quran where it teaches us directly, where Allah says to us directly that our body is an amana, and our body includes our mind. It's not from the head
Definitely.
down. So we are definitely responsible for looking after ourselves, and it's not necessarily just how much salah you pray or how much Quran you
Mm.
read or possessed by a jinn that is the cause of your mental illness or your issues. So yeah, just learning is the most important thing.
I'm really glad you mentioned that, Farah, because this is such an important element, that most of our like people in our community, they tend to blame unseen things or paranormal
Mm.
activities or supernatural elements if someone is showing a type of behavior which is not considered normal, or if someone is showing a sudden change in behavior, then instead of approaching a mental health professional, we straight away jump into conclusions. And it's like we don't want to accept that a human being can go through mental difficulty. It's like we're almost in denial. So,
But
do
the
you
most
come?
important thing, yeah, sorry to cut you off. The most important thing is there most likely is definitely a spiritual component. Even with things like, if I dare to say things like schizophrenia, any
Mm.
mental health spiritual component, because the beauty of Islam, it teaches us, and the Islamic medicine, it doesn't just look at physical problems, even if
Mm,
it is to do with chemical imbalance or whatever the symptoms are.
mm,
It looks at your mental state, it looks at your spiritual state, because we believe that the mind, the body, and the soul are all linked together. So there is a component. It's just when people, like you said, blame everything but themselves, or
mm.
nazar. Nazar is another one.
Yeah, that's
Evil,
another thing.
yeah. So blaming that, do everything you can first to, you fall over, for example. Are you going to blame it on evil eye, or are you going to blame it on the rock that was in the road? So
Yeah.
remove all your from your life first, and then fine if there's other. We don't deny that they it can have a uh, part to play, but it's not the sole cause oftentimes.
And I think in the Quran, the term nafs has been mentioned so many times. This is just a living proof that Allah does want you to look after your psychological well being. And it's not just the body that is an amana, but your soul, your spirit, your psyche. So,
Mm.
Sister Yasmin, I want to ask you, um, we have stigmas attached. We have so many issues that we need to deal with on a daily basis. But what are the most common kinds of complaints or issues that you come across?
So far, the people that have contacted Seek and Sakoon so far, they unfortunately the biggest complaint that we have is young women who have been abused as children. That's been
Mm,
our biggest complaint so far, and because of that, they're struggling in their adult lives because they still hold some of the trauma and some of the stress that they experience from this. Um, and it's very sad, especially in these Muslim communities. These are Muslim girls being abused by sort of either the family members, in fact, all family members, um, So that's the most difficult thing. And then they have things like anxiety, they have confidence issues, self-esteem issues. So far that's the sort of thing that we've been dealing with. And then people approach us with anxiety, depression. Those are the main things that come up.
Yeah. You mentioned a very valid point that cases of abuse and molestation or harassment, this is something that is commonly ignored or not talked about. It's considered as a taboo topic. Although there are thousands and thousands of women who have experienced it or are going through it, but it's one of those things that you don't want to talk about. No one must know, but it's happening on a daily basis, either in the workplace or while you're traveling on public transport, in public spaces, sometimes even your own house by a relative or a family friend. So, Farah, can you tell us what sexual harassment is?
Sexual harassment is part of harassment as a whole. So, harassment itself covers any type of pressure or intimidation by someone else that's offensive or uncomfortable and makes you feel some sort of emotional distress. So, this can be verbal and it can be physical. There's so many different types of harassment, like you mentioned, Marissa. It can be in the workplace, it can be walking down the
Mm,
street, it can also, it doesn't necessarily just, it's not just for women. It's harassment can happen for men as well, whether it's your race, whether it's your religion, sexual orientation, and so yeah, specifically if we talk about sexual harassment, that can again be verbal or physical. So verbal in the sense of saying inappropriate things or emails or
mm,
photos, and then
yeah.
physical, you're actually being touched where, like, when you don't want to be touched,
Mm,
um,
mm,
and you made it clear. And so that is quite a wide umbrella, but actually sexual abuse where you are physically being touched or molested, that's an assault. That counts as a sexual assault, so it's a crime.
Do you get to hear these cases from the local community? Do you hear of women who have experienced it?
We probably hear of a pinprick of the number of cases. We have recently had a girl who did experience sexual abuse at her workplace, unfortunately, and
Mm,
the perpetrator, the person who committed the crime, he denied it when investigated by police. And also, there was no CCTV footage. And on top of that, the girl unfortunately was accused of lying by her own work manager. So she was suspended from her work and she subsequently resigned. So unfortunately, that's another thing that stops people from speaking about this topic, is
yeah.
that the fear will not be believed. However small the topic seems, whether it's just being touched inappropriate or something far worse, then they just don't want to open up about it. And actually, there's been reports, statistics have shown that actually 50% of all women in the UK will experience some workplace harassment at some point in their
Wow.
life. Specifically, Muslim women are at a higher risk of being targeted for harassment, whether that's the way they're dressed or their faith in other
Mhm.
aspects. And also, there was a study in 2018, I believe, by the University of Hull, which showed that South Asian women are much less likely to report any type of abuse. And again,
Out
this
of
is
shame
because,
and guilt.
yeah.
The statistics are shocking. I mean, talking about research studies on the subject, I came across a study some time ago where 90% women in Pakistan who use public transportation were have been molested or harassed or touched inappropriately. So the stats are shocking, but it's a shame that we don't talk about this. We don't hear about this in the media or in our social circles or even in our mosques. I think this needs addressed because Islam came to elevate the status of women, right? Our Prophet ﷺ, he used to give so much respect to women. He used to stand up every time his daughter Fatima walked in. But it's really sad to see that in our community these things are happening, especially behind closed doors inside someone's house where a child may be molested or harassed or abused. How common is that, Sister Yasmin?
Again, like I said, so far, the majority of clients that contact the helpline are suffering from childhood sexual abuse. I was speaking to another psychotherapist, and she was saying the majority of her cases from the Islamic community, cases of sexual abuse is in childhood. I personally know a handful of people who have again been abused in one way or another during their childhood. So it's very common, unfortunately, and it's as if people think they have the right to
Mm,
touch children or women without their consent.
yeah.
And you're right. I think there needs to be a big push for the education and informing people that this is happening, and it is not okay. It is not okay that whilst you're on public transport, you reach out and touch someone
Mm,
that doesn't give you their consent. That is not
yeah.
allowed. And I think there needs to be, whether it's a cultural shift or something within the families, to raise people, raise your children to say it is not right for you to touch women inappropriately.
Mm,
Uh, it is it is not okay for you to grow up thinking that women are objects and that they can be
yes.
touched or assaulted or approached whenever you feel like it. They have rights, they have feelings, they have emotions,
Definitely.
and this needs to be hit home.
And I think we need to challenge the stereotype around this issue because I've seen this in the community as well that if someone has experienced something like this, women themselves tell the victim to keep quiet, not to mention this to anyone. So women should be supporting each other. Women should be encouraging the victim to speak out against abuse or case of molestation or against the perpetrator. But we see we protect the perpetrator and we discourage the victim by saying, forget about it, don't tell anyone, don't disclose it, don't seek professional help. And then for the rest of their lives, the victims suffer emotionally, psychologically, and physically. So, what are the effects of harassment and
Again, it can affect you, as you said, emotionally, physically. So, unfortunately, just as you said, Warisa, we're we're terrible at sort of telling the victims to keep quiet. So I know
mm,
mums whose daughters have been sexually abused. They've gone to their mum, and their mum has said, "Don't worry about it. It's okay. I'll handle it." And they've even confronted the perpetrator, the person who's been doing the abuse, and said, "You've abused my daughter. Please stop." And then that's the end of the conversation. And then you're not allowed to tell the dad. You're not allowed to tell your brothers. And what happens? So what happens to children who have been abused and they're not heard? The psychological effects can be very, very damaging. So often what happens is if you tell someone and they don't believe you, that's very, very
mm,
distressing, especially if you're a child.
yeah,
You know that something's happened that's not right. You're not fully sure why
mm,
it's happened. You don't fully understand the consequences of what happens, but you know that something has happened not right. And if you approach someone and they either don't believe you or say, "Don't worry about it," what often tends to happen is that a child then will become very needy and very need lots of attachment, and then you'll
mm,
often find that children, if they're not believed, will then almost create scenarios in their head where they haven't been abused but they're saying that they have, because they're
mm,
constantly crying out for help. They're constantly saying, "Believe me, believe me, believe me."
yeah,
So they'll make up more and more scenarios, uh, just to try and get someone to listen to them, to hear them. As you go into adulthood, you grow up with this insecurity that you're not believable.
mm,
That leads to anxiety, and that can also lead to depression. Then that can also then affect your relationships as an adult. If you've been abused as a child and you're trying to get married, and then your husband tries to
yeah,
touch you, that can also have very detrimental effects because it can bring back the stress or the trauma that you experienced. So you almost get like a
definitely.
post-traumatic stress disorder from what you experienced. It can also
Mm,
affect your ability to form friendships, um, have normal relationships sort of in the workplace as well. because people can suffer from low confidence. So there's a lot that can happen just from being abused or being harassed at any point.
Sorry, Farah, I can't hear you.
That came to us recently who had been abused as a child. She's grown up not having any trust in herself, any confidence in herself, again, because she believed. And also, a really key thing is for a common manifestation of PTSD, post traumatic stress disorder. I was in conversation with a psychological trauma therapist who works in connection with Seeking Sakoon, and she was saying anger is a very common long-term effect of PTSD. So this woman was very, because she had not healed. It's like when you have a wound and you don't clean it up and let it heal, it will become infected, and it's going to affect you as and your body. So it's the same with as experience of assault or abuse. If it's not healed, it's gonna seep into other parts of your life and affect you even spiritually, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm. So, what can parents do to ensure that their child is safe? Or what can women do to make sure that they are safeguarded, they are protected, and no one takes advantage of their presence?
Most important thing to first say before answering that question is to note the common misconception in the community, or the notion that women bring it upon themselves. If they are, for example, not wearing hijab, or they're not dressed as modestly as other women, it's almost as though it's their fault. This isn't right. It doesn't, again, give men any right to feel like they
Exactly.
can do that. And that's another thing. It's not just teaching the women to safeguard themselves, like Yasmin said earlier, it's teaching the boys as they're growing up how to respect the rights of men and women.
Definitely.
In terms of safeguarding and protecting, I think the most important thing is to start speaking up about it, because men feel like they can get away with it. And then it's a, if women are constantly silent, more men will feel like they have the power to keep doing what they want, and away with it. I think, Yasmin, safeguarding, in terms of safeguarding, I think personally, know your boundaries and know how to stand your ground.
Yeah, that's boundaries is one thing. One piece of advice I'd give the community is, if we're talking about children, if your child reaches out and says something to you that something inappropriate has happened to them, take it seriously. Don't ignore it. It's children can make up stories. They've got big imaginations. To make up a story about being sexually abused is not something that's commonplace. Where would they learn that? Where would they learn that my uncle has touched me? Where would they learn to make that story up? Because that's not in the children's cartoons. That's not in books. So for a child to come out with a statement like that, it's a very serious accusation. And the first piece of advice I would say is take it seriously. If you then don't know what to do with that piece of information, reach out for help. So be it our organisation, be it another organisation, be it the police, be it a community member, reach out for help and just say, this has happened, I don't know what to do next. Because there's support is available if you're going through this. In the adult world, if you're being harassed, or if you feel like you're going to be harassed in the workplace, in the street, there's a few things that you can do to try and safeguard yourself. So be aware of your surroundings, number one. If you're feeling uncomfortable in a situation, trust your instinct. There's probably something not right about the situation you're in. So step away, move away. Avoid, if you're out and about, try and avoid isolated areas. I know it's difficult at this time, but try and be out with friends. Keep your phone with you. Try not to listen to your headphones with both ears, so just if you can hear someone approaching you. And then in the workplace, if you find that you're being put in situations where you're feeling uncomfortable, a few bits of advice would be keep notes, try and keep a record of what's happening. Often when these things happen to us, they're very, very traumatic. And when it comes to
Yeah.
recalling the event, your memory can play tricks on you and you'll forget because you're trying to sort of dampen down what happened. So if you keep a record, that's good. Report it. Don't be afraid to
Yeah.
speak up. Report it straight away. And also be direct with the person that's harassing you. Just say, I am not comfortable with this. This is not appropriate. Please stop. Just to assert those boundaries.
I think in cases where the perpetrator has some kind of power, authority, or has some kind of trust within the family or organization, it becomes even more difficult for the victim to speak out or report, because first thing they are asked is that do you have any sufficient evidence or witness, and they are unable to produce that. Or certain members in the community who appear to be very respectful and even religious or charitable, and they hold a certain position and power. If someone comes and says, this person did this to me, it's like, man versus woman, and, it's hard, isn't it?
Oh, it's extremely hard. It's extremely hard, especially to speak out against a relative or, like you said, a person in position in the community. But this is why we need to break down these barriers and say that it's okay. It is okay
Mm,
to speak out. We need to protect the victims in these situations. We need to protect the victims of our community and make them feel safe, make them feel comfortable. Again, that's why we have platforms like Seeking Sakoon, where you will come. We can keep
yeah.
everything confidential and we can try and protect you and can try and make you feel comfortable, where you can speak out without the judgment, without the repercussions, and we will help you as best we can. And it's organizations that there needs to be more of. There needs to be more support so the victims feel comfortable enough to come and reach out.
Any advice for someone who has been molested or is being harassed within the family by a relative, and she knows that if she, especially women who are living with their in-laws, if someone does something, there is this fear that if I say something, my own relationship will be affected, or I might end up breaking my own relationship with my family if I speak out. So in fear, they spend the rest of their lives and they stay in toxic relations and unhappy marriages because of that.
Speak to someone from a neutral position. So someone outside of the family or a friend who doesn't know about the situation, so they can assess what's going on from a neutral position, an unbiased position. And then at the same time, whether it's like Seeking Sakoon, or organizations such as ourselves, who can advise the person along the process of how to sensitively go about it. Because unfortunately, if you do just say things direct and blunt, people might not believe you, or people will dismiss whatever it is. So approaching the situation sensitively, and often a mentor or a guide or someone who can advise, whether, or even a therapist, is, I think, a really great tool to have by your side when you're going through this journey and process. As Yasmin said, when you're anxious or in a state of mental distress, you sometimes cannot think rationally because you're very, very hurt, or you feel very anguished by what's going on. So yes, having a mentor or an outsider definitely helps with that.
Yeah, just to reiterate, reach out for help. You are not alone. Reach out for help. We will support you whichever way we can. If you don't have the confidence to confront the person, speak to your family, reach out for help. And you are not alone in this process, and don't feel like you have to handle this alone. We are here for you.
Any safety precautions that people can take so they can avoid some certain situations?
Yes, again, if you're in the workplace, just be conscious of doing things alone with people if you don't feel comfortable. Try and host meetings where there's another person present. And I know it takes a lot of courage, but like I said, be direct. If someone is being remotely inappropriate, let them know
Hmm.
this is inappropriate. I am not comfortable with what you're doing. Just
Yeah.
to set that boundary. There's a surah, An-Nur, and verses 30 to 31, and it just says, "Tell believing men to lower their gaze and be modest. This is purer for them. Allah is aware of what they do. And tell the believing women to lower their gaze and be modest, for that is purer for them." So there's direct instruction in the Quran. Lower your gaze, keep your modesty, keep your boundaries, men and women. It's not just women who need to lower their gaze, it's men. And there's direct instruction for that. So just keep that boundary. Just remember that. Just remember that it's better for you to sort of keep a distance. Try not to put yourself in situations where you're alone with men. There's instruction for this, so they don't give them the opportunity to do something inappropriate. Protect yourself.
Can a woman harass another woman, or can a female be the perpetrator as well?
Definitely, I think even in things like social circles, you can feel harassed or bullied to an extent, but it's very subtle, and it will always be part as mazak kar rahe the, or we're having some banter or a laugh. But if something feels uncomfortable to you and it's repetitive, it's not right, whether it's a man or a woman, even whether it's again sexually or verbally or mentally. And just to touch on what Yasmin was saying about lowering your gaze is purer for you. The thought just came to mind, the shame is often associated with women because they feel like the woman's not pure anymore.
Yes.
She's been molested or even, God forbid, raped or anything physical. It doesn't say that in the Quran. It doesn't say believing women who have been touched are impure. It says people to lower their gaze is purer for you. So actually, lifting your gaze and looking multiple times at people, that could be more than being touched. That's, if anything, could suggest impurity. I'm not saying it is, but it's just again another misconception or stereotype.
Because we do see that a lot of women who do wear hijab, who do practice parda, and they dress modestly, and they definitely don't do anything that would encourage anyone to do anything inappropriate, but they still become victims. So this just shows that, like you said, we need to teach our boys, we need to teach our sons from a very young age how to treat women, how to respect them, and how to, set boundaries and limitations and make sure you don't cross it. And most important message that you guys gave today is that there is help out there. You're not alone. So don't feel embarrassed or scared, or don't feel guilty that you brought it upon yourself, but reach out to the right organization, right professionals who are there to provide all kinds of support that's possible. Any last message you would like to give, because we only have 2 minutes left?
Reach out to Seeking Sakoon. We have a number. So if it's okay with you, I can read it out quickly. So our helpline number, if you're seeking help, please either WhatsApp message, text, or call 0731 0000 and also we have an email address that's all lowercase, seekingsakoon111@gmail.com. And also find us on Instagram or Facebook. A lot of people, especially the younger girls or women, they tend to message through Instagram and then they get referred to our helpline and we get them some help.
And I think during this time when everything is online, people will be seeking support online as well, instead of physically going and talking to someone. So, yes, Sister Yasmin, any final words?
Yep, just like my point before, you're not alone. Just remember you're not alone. We are here to support you. Reach out and we'll help you as best we can. And don't feel like you have to suffer in silence. It's not the case. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put us in communities for a reason. So let us help you through whatever grievance you're going through.
Jazakumullah khairan, Sister Farha and Yasmin. Thank you so much for your valuable advice. And lots of du'as for you and the wonderful work that you are doing for the community. May Allah give you lots of barakah and khair. Inshallah, next Saturday with another fantastic guest and a brilliant topic on mental health. Till then, look after your mental health. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.